The rain hit the forest like bullets from the sky. Thunder crashed overhead as Jake pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders. He had been a forest ranger for 8 years now, and storms like this still made him nervous. The wind howled through the tall pine trees, bending them like they were made of rubber. Jake checked his radio one more time. Still no signal. The storm had knocked out most of the communication towers in the area. He was completely alone out here, 20 miles from the nearest town. His ranger station sat on a small hill, surrounded by thick forest that stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction. Lightning flashed across the dark sky, followed by another boom of thunder. That's when he saw something move down in the valley below. At first, he thought it might be a deer, or maybe a bear looking for shelter. But as he squinted through the rain, he realized it looked bigger than any animal he knew. Jake grabbed his flashlight and binoculars from inside the station. The shape was lying near a small creek that had turned into a rushing river because of all the rain. It wasn't moving anymore. His heart started beating faster as he realized what he was looking at. It was a person. Someone was down there in the storm, and they looked like they were in serious trouble. Jake didn't think twice. He grabbed his first aid kit, emergency blanket, and rope. His military training from years ago kicked in automatically. When someone needed help, you helped them. That was it. The climb down the muddy hill was dangerous. Twice he almost slipped and fell. The rain made everything slippery and the wind kept trying to knock him over. But he kept going, following the beam of his flashlight toward the still figure by the water. When he got closer, his breath caught in his throat. It was a woman, and she was in bad shape. She was completely naked and covered in thick, dark mud from head to toe. Her skin looked pale underneath all the dirt, and she wasn't moving at all. Jake dropped to his knees beside her and checked for a pulse. It was there, but weak and slow. Her breathing was shallow, like she was barely hanging on. Hypothermia, he thought. She must have been out here for hours. But as he started to wrap the emergency blanket around her, something made him stop. Even through all the mud and rain, he could see that something was different about her. Her ears seemed a little too pointed. Her fingers looked longer than they should be, and there was something strange about her skin that he couldn't quite figure out. Jake shook his head. The storm and darkness were playing tricks on his eyes. Right now, this person needed help, and that was all that mattered. He had been a medic in the army before becoming a ranger. He knew what to do. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she felt. She seemed to weigh almost nothing, like her bones were hollow like a bird's. As he carried her up the hill toward his station, lightning flashed again. For just a second, he could have sworn he saw strange markings on her arms that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. The climb back up took twice as long with her in his arms, but Jake didn't stop. The rain was getting worse, and her body temperature was dropping fast. He could feel her shivering against his chest, even though she was still unconscious. Finally, he reached the ranger station and kicked the door open. The warmth inside felt like a blessing after the cold storm. Jake laid her gently on his couch and started working fast. He had dealt with hypothermia cases before, but this one seemed worse than usual. He got the wood stove burning hot and found his warmest blankets. As he started cleaning the mud off her face and hands, he got his first clear look at her features. His hands stopped moving for a moment. She was beautiful, but in a way that seemed almost impossible. Her bone structure was perfect, like someone had carved her face from marble. But it was more than that. Even unconscious and half-frozen, there was something about her that seemed to shine from the inside, and those ears definitely weren't normal. Jake forced himself to focus on keeping her alive. Whatever she was, wherever she came from, she needed help right now. He worked for the next hour, warming her up slowly and checking her vital signs. Her pulse got stronger, and her breathing became more regular. As he cleaned more of the mud away, he noticed other strange things. Her skin had a slight shimmer to it, like oil on water. Her hair, once he washed it clean, was the most unusual color he had ever seen. Almost silver, but with hints of blue and green that seemed to change in the firelight, and those markings on her arms were definitely real. They looked like tattoos, but they seemed to pulse very faintly, like they had their own heartbeat. Jake sat back and tried to make sense of what he was seeing. In his 8 years as a ranger, he had found lost hikers, injured campers, and people who had gotten themselves into all kinds of trouble in the wilderness. But he had never found anyone like this. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the small station, everything was quiet except for the crackling of the fire and her steady breathing. Jake made himself some coffee and settled into his chair to watch over her. She was safe now, warm and dry, but he had no idea what he was going to do when she woke up. Around midnight, her eyes opened. Jake nearly dropped his coffee mug. Her eyes were like nothing he had ever seen before. They were purple, but not just any purple. They seemed to hold depth, like looking into a clear mountain lake. And scattered throughout the purple were tiny flecks of silver that caught the firelight and sparkled like stars. She looked around the room confused and scared. When her gaze fell on Jake, she tried to sit up quickly, but she was still too weak. She said something in a language that sounded like music mixed with wind chimes. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe. I found you in the storm." She stared at him for a long moment, those incredible eyes studying his face. Then she tried to speak again, but this time the sounds were different. It was like she was trying to copy the way he had spoken. Safe, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jake nodded. "Yes, you're safe. My name is Jake. I'm here to help." She closed her eyes again, and Jake thought she had fallen back asleep. But then she whispered one more word, so quietly he almost missed it. "Thank you." Then she was unconscious again, leaving Jake alone with 1,000 questions and the certain knowledge that his quiet life as a forest ranger had just changed forever. The lights in the sky disappeared just before dawn, but Zara stayed tense and worried all morning. She kept looking out the windows, her pointed ears twitching at every small sound from the forest. Jake had never seen her this scared before. "They're watching," she whispered, pressing herself against the wall next to the window. "Learning. They do this. Study before attack." Jake made coffee with steady hands, but inside his heart was racing. "How long do we have?" "Days, maybe weeks. They are careful hunters. They want to understand this place first." Zara's voice shook slightly. "Jake, you still can leave. Go to your town. Be safe." Jake handed her a warm mug and sat down across from her. "I told you last night. I'm not going anywhere, but I need to understand what we're up against. Tell me about these hunters." Over the next few days, Zara explained everything she knew about the creatures that were hunting her. The Devourers, she called them. They weren't really alive in the way most beings were. Long ago, they had been a normal species, but they had found a way to steal life energy from other creatures to make themselves live forever. "They take everything," Zara said, her hands shaking as she drew pictures of the monsters. "Not just kill. They absorb. Your memories, your feelings, your soul. Nothing left behind." The drawings she made gave Jake nightmares. The Devourers looked like a horrible mix of machine and twisted flesh. They had long metal claws, eyes that glowed red in the dark, and bodies covered in both armor and what looked like rotting skin. "How do you fight something like that?" Jake asked. "Very hard to fight, but not impossible." Zara's eyes got a determined look. "My people have special weapons, and the Devourers, they have weakness too. They fear things they cannot absorb." "Like what?" Zara touched Jake's hand again, and once more he felt that warm, tingling sensation. "Pure emotions, love, friendship, sacrifice. These things hurt them, make them weak. Jake was starting to understand why the Athani had been watching humans. That's why your people are interested in us, isn't it? Because we care about each other, even strangers. Yes, Zara said softly. Most species in Galaxy, they become cold when they grow powerful. Or they stay warm but never become strong enough to help others. Humans are different. You grow strong, but keep caring hearts. To prove her point, she told Jake stories about other worlds she had visited. Some species were so advanced they lived like gods, but they had forgotten how to feel compassion. Others were kind and peaceful, but too weak to defend themselves when the devourers came. Humans have something special, she said. You fight hardest not for yourselves but for others, even for strangers, even for, she gestured to herself, people who are not your people. Jake felt embarrassed by the praise. I'm just doing what anyone would do. No, Zara said firmly. Not anyone. I have been to many worlds, Jake, met many species. Not anyone would do what you do. As the days passed, their friendship grew deeper. Jake taught Zara more about human culture. He showed her his photo albums from his time in the army, pictures of his family, and old movies on his laptop. She was fascinated by everything, but especially by stories about humans helping each other. Her favorite movie turned out to be an old war film about soldiers who risked everything to save their friends. She watched it 3 times, asking Jake to explain parts she didn't understand. Why do they go back? She asked, about a scene where soldiers ran into danger to rescue a wounded friend. They could escape, be safe. Because that's what you do, Jake said simply. You don't leave people behind. Zara stared at him for a long moment. This is why my people hope for humans, she said quietly. In return, Zara shared more about her world and her people. The Athani lived on a planet with 3 suns and floating cities made of crystal. They could live for thousands of years, and they spent their long lives exploring the galaxy and protecting younger species from threats like the Devourers. Are you married? Jake asked one evening. He had been curious about her personal life, but hadn't wanted to pry. Zara's expression grew sad. Was promised to someone. His name translates to Singer of Starlight. He was beautiful, kind. But the Devourers came to our world 5 years ago. He fought them, did not come back. I'm sorry, Jake said, meaning it. He died protecting children from our nursery schools. Very brave. Zara wiped away a tear. Before he died, he told me to run, to carry warning to other worlds. That is why I was in ship when it crashed. Jake felt a surge of respect for this singer of starlight he would never meet. The guy had given his life to protect kids and had made sure Zara escaped to warn others. That took real courage. He sounds like a good man, Jake said. He was. Like you. Zara looked at Jake with those incredible purple eyes. Same heart, same willingness to sacrifice for others. Over the following days, Zara began showing Jake more of her abilities. She could sense living things from miles away, feeling their emotions and intentions. She could communicate with animals, though she said human animals were simpler than the creatures on her world. Most impressively, she could interface with technology using her mind. She showed Jake by connecting with his laptop and somehow making it display star maps and images from her memories. This is my home, she said, and Jake saw a beautiful planet with purple skies and silver oceans. Cities of crystal floated in, the air like jewels, connected by bridges of light. It's incredible, Jake breathed. Was incredible, Zara corrected sadly. Devourers found it 2 years ago. My people had to evacuate. Now we live on ships, always moving, always hiding. Jake felt angry on behalf of people he had never met. An entire civilization turned into refugees because of these monsters. How many worlds have they destroyed? Hundreds, maybe thousands. They have been doing this for a very long time. Zara's markings pulsed brighter when she was upset, Jake had noticed. Right now they were glowing like angry purple fire. But you fight back. Yes. My people and others. We have alliance. But devourers are many, and they grow stronger with each world they consume. Zara looked out the window at the peaceful forest. This world, Earth, it would make them very powerful. So many people, so much life energy. The thought of those monsters. Getting to Earth, to all the innocent people who had no idea aliens even existed, made Jake's blood run cold. They can't be allowed to find this place. No, Zara agreed. They cannot. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about everything Zara had told him. An entire galaxy at war, with monsters that wanted to consume every living thing, and somehow he had gotten pulled into the middle of it. But as he watched Zara sleeping peacefully on his couch, her strange markings glowing softly in the dark, Jake realized he didn't regret any of it. She had lost her home, her people, the man she loved. She was alone and scared, thousands of light years from anything familiar. And yet she had still risked her life to warn other worlds about the danger coming for them. That took a special kind of courage. Jake got up quietly and checked his weapons again. He cleaned his rifles, counted his ammunition, and made a list of all the supplies he had. If the Devourers wanted Zara, they were going to have to go through him first. Outside, something howled in the distance. It didn't sound like any animal Jake knew. Zara's eyes snapped open immediately, and she sat up with a look of pure terror on her face. "They're here," she whispered. "The hunt begins now." The howling sound came again, closer this time. It wasn't like any wolf or coyote Jake had ever heard. This sound was deeper, more mechanical, like metal scraping against stone mixed with the cry of a dying animal. Zara jumped up from the couch, her whole body trembling. "Scout drones," she whispered. "They send them first to map the area, find my exact location." Jake grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. Through the darkness, he could see strange lights moving between the trees. They weren't like flashlights or any normal light source. These glowed with a sickly green color that seemed to make the shadows darker instead of brighter. "How many?" Jake asked, checking his weapon. "3, maybe 4. Zara was gathering the pieces of her broken ship equipment, stuffing them into a backpack Jake had given her. "But more will come. Many more." The lights were getting closer. Jake could see them now, floating metal spheres about the size of basketballs, drifting through the forest like deadly fireflies. They moved with purpose, scanning everything with beams of that horrible green light. "Do they know we're here yet?" Jake whispered. "Soon they will. They are reading heat signatures, life energy patterns." Zara slung the backpack over her shoulders. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they report back to the main ships." Jake made a quick decision. "Then we're not waiting around for them to find us." He had spent 8 years learning every inch of this forest. He knew places where vehicles couldn't go, caves hidden behind waterfalls, and trails that didn't exist on any map. If these creatures wanted to hunt Zara, they were going to have to do it on his territory, by his rules. "Can you run?" Jake asked, loading extra ammunition into his pockets. "Yes, but Jake, we cannot outrun them forever. Eventually they will corner us." "I'm not planning to run forever." Jake's jaw was set in determination. "I'm planning to make them regret coming here." They slipped out the back door of the ranger station just as the first scout drone rounded the front of the building. Jake led Zara into the thick woods, following a deer path that wound uphill toward the rocky cliffs on the north side of his territory. Behind them, the green lights swarmed around the empty station. More howling sounds filled the air, but different this time. These were calls of communication, the drones reporting what they had found. "They know we were there," Zara said as they climbed higher into the forest. Now they will call the hunters. Jake had chosen their destination carefully. There was an old mining cave about 2 miles up the mountain, hidden behind thick brush and almost impossible to find unless you knew exactly where to look. More importantly, it had 3 different exits. If they got trapped, they could still escape. But as they climbed, Jake was setting traps. He had learned guerrilla warfare during his time in the army, and he had 8 years of ranger experience to draw on. He knew how to use the forest itself as a weapon. Every few hundred yards, he would stop to rig simple but effective traps using supplies from his emergency kit. A tripwire here connected to a bundle of fireworks, not enough to seriously hurt the creatures, but enough to blind and confuse them temporarily. A carefully balanced log there positioned to swing down and knock a pursuer off the narrow trail. Fishing lines stretched across the path at neck height, nearly invisible in the darkness. "Clever," Zara said, watching him work. "You use their expectations against them. That's the idea. They're used to hunting in space or on open ground. But this is my forest. I know every tree, every rock, every hiding spot." Jake finished setting another trap and stood up. "Let's see how they like playing by human rules." They reached the cave just as the real hunters arrived. Jake heard them before he saw them, a sound like helicopters mixed with the roar of jet engines. 3 ships descended through the clouds, their hulls black as space and covered in pulsing red lights. They were bigger than Jake had expected, each one the size of a school bus. The ships didn't land. Instead, they hovered about 50 feet above the treetops while something dropped out of their bellies. At first, Jake thought they were parachutes, but as the shapes got closer, he realized they were the hunters themselves. The Devourers were even more terrifying in person than in Zara's drawings. They fell through the air like twisted angels, their mechanical wings spreading wide to control their descent. Jake could see their glowing red eyes scanning the forest below and the way their metal claws gleamed in the moonlight. 6 of them, Jake whispered, counting the shapes dropping toward the forest floor. "Full hunting pack," Zara replied, her voice tight with fear. "They are taking this very seriously." The creatures landed with heavy thuds that Jake could feel through the ground. Almost immediately, they began moving through the forest with deadly purpose. Unlike the scout drones, these hunters didn't need lights. They seemed to see perfectly in the darkness. Jake's first trap worked better than he had hoped. The lead. Devourer tripped the fireworks wire, and suddenly the night exploded with color and noise. The creature let out a shriek of rage and confusion as bright sparks showered down around it. But it recovered quickly. Too quickly. Within seconds it was moving again, and now it looked angry. "They learn fast," Zara warned. "Next trap will not work as well." She was right. The second devourer avoided the swinging log by simply jumping over it. The third one tore through Jake's fishing line barrier like it wasn't even there. They were adapting to his tactics in real time. But Jake wasn't done yet. He had spent years in these mountains, and he knew things about this terrain that no alien hunter could learn in a few minutes. "This way," he whispered, leading Zara along a ledge that was only 2 feet wide. On one side was solid rock. On the other was a drop of about 100 feet into a rocky ravine. The Devourers followed, but they were too heavy and clumsy for the narrow ledge. Jake heard one of them slip and fall, crashing through tree branches on its way down to the rocks below. Its shriek of pain echoed through the canyon. "One down," Jake muttered grimly. But that still left 5, and they were getting smarter about following him. Instead of staying on the ground, 2 of them took to the air with their mechanical wings. Now they could track Jake and Zara from above while the others herded them from below. Jake realized they were being driven toward a trap. The flying hunters were forcing them toward an open meadow where the ground-based creatures could surround them. "They're boxing us in," he told Zara. "Yes, this is how they hunt. Like pack animals, but smarter." Zara was breathing hard from the climb, and her markings were pulsing rapidly with stress. "Jake, I have idea, but very dangerous." "More dangerous than what we're already doing?" "Much more." Zara stopped and turned to face him. I can use my ship's power core. Make it overload, big explosion, kill all hunters in area. Jake stared at her. What about us? We would have to be very far away. And she hesitated. If I do this, I cannot call for rescue. Power core is only way to send message to my people. Jake understood what she was saying. If she used her ship's power source as a weapon, she would be stranded on Earth forever. No way home, no way to contact her people. She would be giving up everything to protect him and his world. There has to be another way, Jake said. Before Zara could answer, one of the flying hunters dropped out of the sky right in front of them. Up close, the creature was even more horrible than Jake had imagined. Its red eyes burned like coals, and its metal claws were stained with something dark that might have been blood from 1,000 different worlds. The devourer looked at Zara and spoke in a voice like grinding gears. Jake couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Surrender or die. Zara replied in the same harsh language, and Jake could hear the defiance in her voice. She was telling the monster exactly what it could do with its demands. The creature's response was to lunge forward with claws extended, aiming straight for Zara's heart. Jake didn't think. He just moved. His rifle came up and he fired 3 shots center mass, just like he had been trained in the army. The bullets struck the devourer and knocked it backward, but to Jake's horror, the wounds began healing almost immediately. Physical damage heals too fast, Zara shouted over the creature's roars of pain and anger. But you hurt it. You slow it down. The wounded devourer was back on its feet, but moving more slowly now. Behind it, Jake could hear the others crashing through the forest toward the sound of gunfire. Run! Jake ordered, pushing Zara ahead of him on the trail. But as they ran, Jake was already planning his next move. These creatures might heal fast and be hard to kill, but they weren't invincible. He had hurt one. That meant he could hurt the others. And Jake was just getting started. They wanted to hunt in his forest? Fine. But they were about to learn that sometimes the prey fights back harder than the predator expected. Behind them, the howling of the remaining hunters filled the night, air, and Jake could hear their heavy footsteps pounding against the earth as they gave chase. The real battle was just beginning. Jake led Zara through the darkest parts of the forest, using every trick he had learned in 8 years as a ranger. They moved like ghosts between the trees, staying off the main trails, crossing streams to break their scent trail, and using the thick canopy to hide from the flying hunters above. But the devourers were relentless. Every time Jake thought they had lost them, those horrible howling calls would echo through the forest, getting closer. The creatures were coordinating their search, communicating with each other in ways Jake didn't understand. They're hurting us, Jake realized as they crouched behind a fallen log. Pushing us toward something, Zara nodded grimly. Open ground, where they can surround us and we cannot hide. Her breathing was labored, and Jake could see exhaustion in her purple eyes. Jake, we cannot run much longer. Jake checked his ammunition. He was down to his last magazine for the rifle, plus the rounds in his pistol. Not nearly enough to fight 5 heavily armed alien hunters in open combat. Then we don't run, Jake said, making a decision that surprised even him. We make our stand here. Here. Zara looked around at the small clearing they had stopped in. It was surrounded by thick trees and had only 2 ways in or out. Jake, this is trap. No escape routes. Exactly. Jake started pulling supplies from his pack. They expect us to keep running until we're too tired to fight. But what if we turn the tables? What if we trap them instead? Jake had been carrying emergency supplies that every ranger learned to use. Road flares, a small axe, rope, and a few other tools that could be used for much more than their intended purpose. As Zara watched in amazement, Jake began turning the small clearing into a fortress. He chopped down several small trees and dragged them into position to create barriers. He tied rope between the larger trees at ankle height, creating invisible tripwires in the darkness. Most importantly, he positioned his road flares around the perimeter of the clearing. "When I light these, this whole area will be bright as day," Jake explained. "These creatures have been hunting us in the dark, using their night vision advantage. But humans have been using fire to level the playing field for thousands of years." Zara stared at him with something that might have been admiration. "You are not just fighting them, you are outthinking them." "That's what humans do best," Jake said, checking his rifle one more time. "We adapt. We improvise. We find ways to win even when we're outgunned." The sound of approaching footsteps told them their time was up. Jake could see shapes moving in the darkness beyond the tree line. The remaining 5 devourers had found them. "Light. The flares," Jake whispered. Zara struck the first flare, and suddenly the clearing blazed with red light. The effect on the devourers was immediate and dramatic. They shrieked and stumbled backward, their enhanced night vision suddenly useless. In the brilliant glare, Jake didn't waste the opportunity. He opened fire on the closest creature, putting 3 rounds into its center mass before moving to the next target. The bullets didn't kill them, but they slowed them down, made them cautious. But the devourers adapted quickly. Within minutes, they had adjusted to the light and were advancing again, spreading out to attack from multiple directions. That's when Zara surprised everyone, including Jake. She stepped into the center of the clearing and began to glow. The markings on her arms and face pulsed brighter and brighter until she was shining like a star. But this wasn't just light. Jake could feel something else radiating from her. Warmth, hope, and something that felt like pure love. The effect on the devourers was incredible. They stopped advancing and began backing away, making sounds of pain and confusion. One of them actually fell to its knees, clutching its head as if something was causing it terrible agony. "What are you doing?" Jake shouted over the noise. "Showing them what they cannot take," Zara called back, her voice somehow calm despite the chaos around them. "Love, friendship, sacrifice, these things burn them like fire." Jake understood. This was what she had meant when she said the devourers feared emotions they couldn't absorb. Zara was weaponizing the very feelings that made her and Jake fight. So hard to protect each other. But the effort was costing her. Jake could see her strength fading as she maintained the emotional assault. She was literally burning herself out to hold the creatures at bay. One of the devourers, larger than the others, managed to push through Zara's emotional barrier. It raised its claws and lunged straight at her. Jake moved without thinking. He threw himself between Zara and the creature, taking the full force of its attack. The claws raked across his chest, tearing through his jacket and shirt and sending him crashing to the ground. Pain exploded through Jake's body, but what happened next was even more surprising. As his blood hit the ground, Zara's glow intensified, 100-fold. The emotional energy she was projecting became so powerful that all 5 devourers were driven to their knees, writhing in agony. "Jake!" Zara dropped beside him, pressing her hands against his wounds. "Why did you do that?" Jake looked up at her glowing face and smiled despite the pain. "Because that's what you do for people you care about." Zara's eyes filled with tears, and each tear seemed to glow with its own light. "You humans," she whispered. "So impossible. So beautiful." She pressed her hands harder against his wounds, and Jake felt that familiar tingling sensation, but much stronger now. The pain began to fade, and he could feel his injuries healing, at an incredible rate. But something else was happening too. Jake could suddenly sense Zara's thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own. He felt her gratitude, her amazement at his willingness to sacrifice himself for her, and underneath it all, a growing love that took his breath away. "The life bond," Zara whispered, apparently sensing his thoughts as well. "It is permanent now. We are connected forever." Jake didn't mind. Looking into her incredible purple eyes, feeling the warmth of her emotions mixing with his own, he realized he couldn't imagine a better way to spend forever. Around them, the devourers were retreating. The combination of Jake's sacrifice and Zara's emotional power had been too much for them. They dragged themselves back toward their ships, defeated and broken, but Jake barely noticed. He was staring up at the night sky, where new lights were appearing. These weren't the sickly green glow of devourer ships. These lights were silver and blue, beautiful and welcoming. "Rescue ships," Zara said, following his gaze. "My people felt the life bond form. They know what happened here." 3 elegant ships descended from the clouds, their hulls gleaming like polished metal. They were nothing like the ugly, threatening devourer vessels. These ships looked like they had been crafted by artists rather than warriors. As the Athani ships landed, Jake saw figures emerging from them. They looked similar to Zara but taller, wearing robes that seemed to be made of starlight itself. Their leader, an elderly male with silver hair and kind eyes, approached Jake and Zara with obvious amazement. He spoke to Zara in their musical language, and Jake was surprised to discover he could understand every word through their bond. "Daughter," the elder was saying, "what you have accomplished here is beyond remarkable. This human has formed a true partnership with you. In all our centuries of existence, we have seen this happen only a handful of times." Zara helped Jake to his feet, and he was amazed to find that his wounds had healed completely. "Elder Theron, this is Jake. He saved my life and protected me from the devourers." Elder Theron studied Jake with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. "Young human, what you have done here will be remembered for generations. You have proven that your species possesses the rarest quality in the galaxy, the willingness to sacrifice everything for another being's welfare." "I just did what felt right," Jake said simply. "Exactly," Theron smiled. "That is what makes your species so special. You do what is right without thought of reward or recognition." Over the next hour, as the Athani ships dealt with the retreating devourers and secured the area, Theron explained what Jake's actions meant for both their species. "For centuries, we have watched humanity from a distance, hoping you would prove worthy of joining the galactic community. But we needed to be sure you could work alongside other species as equals, not conquerors. And Jake has proven that?" Zara asked. "More than proven it. He has demonstrated that humans can form bonds with alien species that transcend all barriers. This changes everything." Theron offered Jake a choice that would change his life forever. He could stay on Earth and live a normal life, with the Athani ensuring that the devourers never returned to threaten his world. Or he could come with them, serving as the first human ambassador to the galactic community. Jake looked at Zara, feeling her thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own. Through their bond, he could sense her hope that he would choose to come with her, but also her willingness to support whatever decision he made. "If I come with you," Jake asked, "will I be able to help protect other worlds from the devourers?" "You would be instrumental in that fight," Theron confirmed. "Your tactical skills and human perspective would be invaluable. And with Zara as your partner, you would be representing the best of both our species." Jake didn't need to think about it. He had spent his whole life protecting a small section of forest on one world. Now he had the chance to help protect entire civilizations across the galaxy. Jake barely slept that first night. Every few minutes he would check on the strange woman sleeping on his couch. Her breathing stayed steady, but those faint markings on her arms kept glowing softly in the dark. He had convinced himself it was just his imagination, but now he was sure. They were definitely pulsing with their own light. By morning, the storm had passed, but thick clouds still covered the sky. Jake made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee. The smell seemed to wake her up. She opened those incredible purple eyes and looked around the room again, less confused this time. She tried to sit up, and Jake rushed over to help her. She was stronger now, but still shaky. He had found an old flannel shirt and some sweatpants that were way too big for her, but at least they kept her covered and warm. "Hungry?" Jake asked, pointing to the food. She tilted her head, studying his face like she was trying to understand more than just his words. Then she nodded slowly. Jake helped her to the small table and set a plate in front of her. She stared at the eggs for a moment, then looked at him questioningly. He took a bite of his own food to show her it was safe. She copied him, taking a small, careful bite. Her eyes went wide with surprise, and then she smiled. It was the first time Jake had seen her smile, and it was like watching the sun come out after a week of rain. She ate slowly but finished everything on her plate. "Good?" Jake asked. "Good," she repeated, her voice getting stronger. "Thank you, Jake." The fact that she remembered his name surprised him. Over the next few hours, Jake started to realize just how smart she was. She picked up new words incredibly fast. By afternoon, she could say simple sentences, even though her accent was unlike anything he had ever heard. She pointed to herself and made a sound that was part music, part whistle. Jake tried to repeat it but failed completely. She laughed, a sound like silver bells, and tried again, slower this time. "Zara," Jake said finally, making it as close as he could manage. She nodded and clapped her hands together, pleased that he was trying. Over the next 2 days, their communication got better and better. Zara learned English words at an amazing speed, while Jake learned that she was definitely not from Earth. She tried to explain where she came from by drawing pictures with his pencils. She drew stars and circles that must have been planets. Then she drew what looked like ships flying between them. When Jake pointed to Earth on his old atlas, she shook her head and pointed to a spot far away from everything he knew. "Home," she said sadly, touching the empty space beyond the edge of the map. "Far, far home." Jake showed her pictures in his books and magazines. She was fascinated by everything: cars, cities, animals she had never seen before. But when she saw a picture of a family having dinner together, she got very quiet and sad. "Family?" Jake asked gently. Zara's eyes filled with tears. She drew more pictures, but these ones were different. Dark shapes chasing smaller figures. Explosions, ships falling from the sky. She drew herself running, always running, with terror in every line. "Bad ones," she whispered, pointing to the dark shapes in her drawings. "They come. They hunt. They—" She struggled for the right word, then made a gesture like something being eaten. "They take life. All life." Jake felt cold despite the warm fire. "They're hunting you?" Zara nodded. "My people fight them. Long, long time. I was—" "Scout? Yes, Scout. Ship broken. Fall here." She pointed to the ground. Jake understood now why she had been so scared and alone in the forest. She was a refugee, running from something terrible. His protective instincts, the same ones that had made him rush out into the storm to save her, kicked in even stronger. "You're safe here," he told her firmly. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Zara studied his face for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his hand. The moment her skin touched his, Jake felt something incredible. It was like a warm feeling spreading through his whole body, but more than that. For just a second, he could feel what she was feeling: gratitude, relief, and something that might have been hope. She pulled her hand back quickly, looking surprised at herself. "Sorry," she said. "My people. We share feelings sometimes. Not mean to do." "It's okay," Jake said, even though his hand was still tingling where she had touched him. "What else can your people do?" Zara showed him over the next few days. She could make small cuts heal in just minutes. She could sense things that were far away, like when a deer was approaching the station long before Jake could hear it. And sometimes, late at night when she thought he was sleeping, he caught her talking to the broken pieces of what must have been her ship. She had managed to save some parts from the crash site. They looked like metal, but they were warm to the touch and seemed to glow with their own inner light. When Zara held them, she could make them respond to her thoughts, flickering and changing color. "I try to fix," she explained when she caught Jake watching. "Maybe call for help, but very broken. Need many parts." Jake wanted to help her, but the technology was beyond anything he understood. Instead, he helped in other ways. He brought her books to help her learn English faster. He taught her about human food, human customs, human jokes that made her laugh, that musical laugh. In return, Zara told him about her world and her people. They were called the Ithani, and they were explorers and peacekeepers. They had been traveling among the stars for thousands of years, helping younger species and fighting against the darkness that wanted to consume everything. "Your people," Zara said one evening as they sat by the fire. "They are special." "Special how?" Jake asked. "Most peoples, they grow strong but lose heart. Or they keep heart but stay weak. Humans," she struggled for the words. "You have both. Strong and caring. Rare in galaxy." Jake felt proud hearing that, even though he wasn't sure he deserved it. He was just one person doing what felt right, but their peaceful time together was about to end. On the 7th night since he had found her, Zara suddenly sat up straight, her eyes wide with fear. "They come," she whispered, staring out the dark window. "The hunters. They found me." Jake looked outside, but saw nothing except the usual forest darkness. "Are you sure?" Zara was already moving, gathering the pieces of her broken ship with shaking hands. "Lights in sky. 3 ships. They track my... She touched her chest, searching for the word. "Your heartbeat?" Jake guessed. "Yes, but more. Life energy. They feel it from far away." Tears ran down her face. "You must go, Jake. Run far. They will hurt you if you stay." Jake stood up and walked to his gun cabinet. He had hunting rifles, a shotgun, and a pistol from his military days. He started loading them all. "Jake, no!" Zara cried. "You cannot fight them. Too strong, too many." Jake turned to look at her, his jaw set in determination. "Zara, I found you half dead in a storm, and I saved your life. Do you really think I'm going to just walk away now and let these things take you?" "But you will die," she whispered. Jake checked his rifle and slung it over his shoulder. "Maybe, but I'm not running. This is my forest, my home, and you're under my protection now." For the first time since he had known her, Zara smiled through her tears. "Humans," she said softly. "So stubborn, so brave, so impossible." Outside, 3 points of light were growing brighter in the night sky, coming closer to the small ranger station, where a human man was about to take on the most dangerous challenge of his life to protect someone he barely knew but had grown to care about deeply.